Can I change the type of elastic used in a panty pattern? Yes, with some changes. These are the Orla Briefs, and they use fold-over elastic along the leg and waist openings. I received this question this morning about changing the type of elastic used in the Orla Brief pattern. So fold-over elastic wraps around the cut edge of the fabric and does not require any elastic allowance. So what if you want to change it to a different type of elastic? So let's take a look at a narrow stretch lace. Narrow stretch lace doesn't require any elastic allowance either. However, you do want to consider how you will finish the fabric behind the lace. Now, normally you would trim away the excess fabric, which is fine. However, consider the gusset area. I personally would find it uncomfortable to have this fabric trimmed away and leaving the lace exposed to my body. So what I did here was add an extra line of stitching near the raw edge of the fabric, and I left the fabric intact, and I just kind of transitioned from trimming the fabric to leaving it intact. So if you want to switch to a stretch lace, that's the only change you would need to make. However, if you want to change to picot elastic, there are a few other things that you need to do. Now, picot elastic requires adding elastic allowance. While fold-over elastic encases the raw edge of the fabric, picot elastic is applied along the edge and then turned in, so you end up losing some width in your pattern pieces. If you were to take the original pattern made for fold-over elastic and add picot elastic to it, you would end up with a gusset that is much narrower, and you would lose some of your bum coverage, and this would definitely change the fit and probably make it uncomfortable. So we will need to add some elastic allowance to the pattern pieces. So let's take a look. Okay, so how do we add elastic allowance? Here I have my pattern printed out and taped together but not cut out. On most of my patterns, I show both the cutting line and the seam line, so it's easy for you to see how much the seam allowance is and how much the elastic allowance is. So as you can see, there is no elastic allowance along the leg line. There is just the one line. So that means we will need to add elastic allowance ourselves. So we need to measure our elastic and see how much we will need to add. So I'm going to use this elastic, and I only measure the solid part of the elastic. I don't include the picots. So if I measure it with my ruler, it is 1/4 inch. So that means we need to add 1/4 inch along the leg line. That will include the front piece, the back piece, and the gusset. All of those pieces go along the leg opening. So I'm going to use my ruler and add 1/4 inch along the leg. Okay, so now we have added 1/4 inch elastic allowance, let's mark that, along the leg line of the pattern pieces. So what would you do if you want to do the opposite and you have a pattern that has picot elastic and has elastic allowance, and you want to switch it to fold-over elastic or stretch lace, which doesn't require elastic allowance? Well, then you would do the opposite of what we did here. And instead of adding seam allowance, you would remove it. So you line your ruler to the edge and you would remove whatever the elastic allowance was, and then it would be ready to use fold-over elastic or stretch lace. If you have any more questions about changing the elastic type in your pattern, please leave me a comment below. Happy sewing!